Today, we are speaking to Kim McGuinness, who is the Labour Mayor of the North East. She represents a vast northern conurbation with a lot of similarities to Greater Manchester, and as a Geordie, I'm bound to say maybe perhaps a superior conurbation. Hello, Kim, and welcome to Times Radio.
Hello there. I totally agree with you there, Mind, I have to admit. Am I the first of your one-a-day mayors?
You are the first of our one-a-day mayor. A mayor a day keeps the doctor away is what we're trying to say this week.
I hope so.
So let's start off. Why do you think being a mayor could be good training to be a Prime Minister? Because Andy Burnham was managing a sort of £3 billion budget in Greater Manchester, and he's gone from there to Downing Street with incredible speed, and it feels as if this is a new way of doing politics, a new kind of political journey.
I think that's actually the answer to the question. It's a new way of doing politics. I think being a mayor, you are both close enough to people where you live to be able to take direct action, to know exactly what it is that they want, to be able to change and improve their lives in their area, the place that they love, but also strategic enough to make those big decisions. And, you know, we very rarely get to see a Prime Minister who goes into office with a real record. And those who've been mayors Andy Burnham, and one who I would agree with less, Boris Johnson, have done exactly that. They've gone in with a record, a delivery record, and they know how to get things done.
I think the thing, Kim, is that when you're a directly elected mayor like yourself, you've got a lot of executive powers. You can just do stuff, as people like to say online. Whereas when you're an MP, it's quite a different skill set. And it does feel to me as if Andy Burnham is taking that attitude from Greater Manchester to London. But obviously, things are going to get a bit trickier when it comes to the budget, because when you're a mayor, your budget is set by central government, you know, the spending envelope. Whereas when you're Prime Minister, it's a much bigger magnitude.
Yeah, I think that getting stuff done thing is exactly what it's all about. And I think that's actually why we're seeing Andy's first moves be about devolution, you know, much more radical devolution away from the centre into the regions. And the interesting thing about that budget point is I believe that will save money. I think we will get more for less by devolving more things, decentralising them, taking away, you know, the big, very cumbersome government machine, and saying, look, the more we can do these things locally, people feel like they've got agency over the decisions that are being made in their area. They're in control. They can elect and get rid of the mayor if they're not happy, and things will get done quicker. You know, part of the reason things cost so much is because they take too long and everything is too bureaucratic and too slow. And he clearly wants to change that.
So from your time so far as Mayor of the North East of England, what is the lesson you've learned in the job that you would like to pass on to the Prime Minister?
Well, for me, it is exactly about that. It's deliver on people's priorities. It's very obvious when you spend time in a place like mine. You know, we are the furthest English region away from Whitehall, away from Westminster, and people know it. They can feel it. They can feel that they've been left behind and let down and not given the attention or the funding they deserve. And so paying attention to areas like mine, making sure that we are once and for all battling and ending that north-south divide and the inequality in this country is going to be fundamental to Andy's success and to all of our successes. And we've just got to get on with the job and deliver, because that's what people want. They just want to see things get better every day.
Now, some people who would be critics, and I've seen a fair bit of this online in the past couple of weeks, would say being a mayor is politics on easy mode, because once you're elected, you don't have an opposition. You will obviously have scrutiny from the local councils in your conurbation game, but you don't have somebody like you have the leader of the opposition standing at the dispatch box. And because you've got all this power and ability to spend money, it's quite easy to be a popular mayor. Do you think that transition is going to be more difficult for Andy Burnham than he might have thought when we start to get to the hard stuff? You know, the stuff he's done over the past couple of weeks is a lot of people-pleasing things, but that will come with a tougher edge come the autumn.
I'm going to assume that the people who've said that being a mayor is politics on easy mode are probably not people who've experienced being a mayor or spent any time with. I think that's probably
very fair.
For mayors, and I what's been really interesting about all of this over the last few days and weeks is how many people who particularly in the bubble, who've never even considered devolution and never thought about mayors, are now, are full of opinions and knowledge about what it's like to be one. And I think the idea that we simply just have bags of money to do absolutely everything to our heart's desire is very misguided. We still have got budget constraints. It is still very easy to say, everybody here wants a road or a railway or a bridge or more youth clubs or the cost of living crisis dealing with, and you still don't necessarily have the money to make all of that happen. And what you've got to do as a mayor, and going to that point about opposition, is you've got to work much more cross-party, much more collaboratively with the local councils. You've got to bring people together, put your region first, and come up with creative and innovative solutions to get things done. That's what we've seen in Greater Manchester. That's what we're delivering here in the North East. And I think having a little bit more of that attitude in government is a positive thing. I don't think it'll be easy. Nobody ever said running a country will be easy. Arguably no job prepares you. But I think a job like being a mayor, where, the buck in the region stops with you. You are the person who made the decision. You're the person who will either succeed or fail at the ballot box on the basis of that decision. That's much more like being a Prime Minister than, for example, coming through the backbench route, like you say.
Now, one of the things Andy Burnham has spoken about, Kim, is creating a written constitution to codify regional powers. And this is something that's done the rounds for quite a long time. I mean, decades. People are saying we need this. But is there not a danger that if we had a legal constitution, we'd just become like America, where everything gets challenged by lawyers the whole time? And one of the advantages of Britain is the fact that we can adapt and change, that you can introduce directly elected mayors without having to have a big constitutional rewrite. You can have devolved parliaments. You can devolve more powers. Whereas if it's all written down in a big document, then it's almost impossible to ever change it.
Yeah, I sort of see that argument, but at the same time, we've got to get to a point where, for example, our relationship as regions with government is much more grown up and much less about turning up with a begging bowl and saying, please government, can I have this? And please government, we can do this better. And much more about, devolution by default. The reason we do it like this is because it's better for people, better for their day-to-day lives, better for improving their lives. And I think a constitution will do that. I like to think we are less litigious than the US, but I think it's a fair question. And I think we'd have to put protections in place for that. But I do think, setting in stone that this is the way the country's run. I think what we have to remember here is actually we are on the precipice of a very historic moment in British politics now. We are changing the way this country's run for the first time in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And we're doing it in the interests of the people that don't live in the capital.
And one of the things that the Prime Minister talked about is devolving more powers when it comes to income tax. Now, this has been a little bit controversial because on the one hand, it would allow mayors like yourself to borrow against that money to fund infrastructure projects. And I think no one would dispute that there's big parts of the Midlands, the North, that need a lot better infrastructure to match the southeast of England. But there's been some backlash from, the Tory Mayor Ben Houchen, who we've got on in a couple of days' time. He said that he would actually prefer to have an income tax rebate for people. And it feels to me as if, why can't he do that, Kim? Why can't he be allowed if he wants to do that? And then you could have a Labour candidate running against him and say, well, actually, I want to borrow more. And you can play out those arguments as opposed to Whitehorse saying, you can't do that, Mr. Houchen.
Well, in many respects, that's an argument for Ben to have with government. But my view is that, if you went into the street and you asked people and you said, what would you like? Hugely improved infrastructure or £2 or £3 back? I think I know what they're going to say, because, anything more than, anything that comes from that uplift will be gimmicky when you spread it between your population. Whereas the ability to really change the fabric of a place, really take the place you love, because that's the other thing about mayors. On a whole, we do these jobs because we love our regions and we love our places and people. And so being able to borrow the money, get things done, change the fabric of places to improve people's lives, I think that's the sort of change that people want to see. We've got to be tackling the cost of living crisis. We've got to be supporting people to get more money into their pockets, which is why I'm really keen on some of the other devolved things, like the ability to tackle the NEET crisis. But I genuinely don't think handing people back tiny sums of money that will make no difference to their lives is a positive way to approach devolution.
Well, you mentioned mayors loving the places they represent. Of course, Andy Burnham is not the first mayor to go to Downing Street. Boris Johnson, via a roundabout route of the Foreign Office and Uxbridge and Ruislip, became the first mayor to become Prime Minister. You know, do you think he was the trailblazer for Andy Burnham? Is that how you would see Boris Johnson?
I don't think Andy would consider Boris Johnson to be the trailblazer. There is something, though, about normalising different routes into the top jobs. And, you know, one comparison that has been drawn is in America, this would be much more normal, that somebody would come through as a mayor, perhaps become a governor. And obviously our mayors are probably more like governors than mayors in terms of powers and scale, and then go on to become Prime Minister. So I think there is something positive about the fact that that is becoming more normal. People who've, you know, run places, done things, delivered things. I think it is a positive move in politics. But I'd be very surprised if Andy considers Boris to be a role model.
I think there's an interesting comparison across the pond, though, because Mike Bloomberg, who's the mayor of New York, he made a US presidential bid, and Zohan Mandani is making a lot of talk as well. And you could see a world where he tries to go for the very top, which leaves us, of course, the question, Kim, do you have your eyes on Downing Street one day then? Can you see following Andy Burnham the way he might be going?
Do you know, it's not on my list of things to do at the moment. I won't lie to you.
At the moment.
But I think it's not on my list of things to do. But I think for me, that, you know, to take it back to that real opportunity and moment of change, you know, I've never stood for Parliament, ever. I've never put myself in a position to want to go into government in that way. And that's because I fundamentally believe the way this country is run needs to change. And it has to be about more devolution of powers to the region. We've got to get it to a point where this is much more normal, that it's not a controversial thing, that it's not something that is a massive change policy, but actually the way that things are done. And I really want to be a part of that from the regions. And I think it's a very, very exciting time to represent the regions. I think it's a very exciting time to live somewhere that isn't London. I think it's an exciting time to be a mayor.
Well, I would say that is a great explanation, which mirrors almost exactly what Andy Burnham said before he decided to stand for Makerfield and become mayor. So I'm not going to rule out ever seeing you in Parliament yet. But Kim McGuinness, thank you so much for your time. It's great to hear from you. That was Kim McGuinness, who is the Labour mayor of the North East of England.